I still remember that Wednesday morning like it was yesterday. Heather stood in our bedroom doorway, arms crossed her face, a cold mask I barely recognized anymore. "If you want any intimacy in this marriage, you will do as I say," she declared as if announcing a new house rule about taking out the trash. 5 years of marriage had slowly transformed from love notes and weekend getaways to this, my wife using our physical connection as a bargaining chip. The confusion in my chest hardened into something unfamiliar. A backbone, maybe. For a brief moment, I considered what life might be like if I finally stood up for myself. I had no idea that moment would change everything. Before I tell you how I finally escaped my marriage prison, drop a comment telling me where you watching from. Hit subscribe if you have ever stood up against someone who tried to control you. I met Heather at my college friend Drew's wedding 6 years ago. At 32, I had settled comfortably into my career as an architectural designer at a prestigious firm in Seattle. That night, I noticed her immediately, laughing with the bridesmaid's dark hair cascading down her back, her green dress catching the light. When our eyes met across the reception hall, something electric passed between us. "You have been staring at me for 20 minutes, she said, when she finally approached me. "I figured I should save you the trouble of working up the courage to talk to me." Her directness caught me off guard, but her smile softened the edges. Heather was 29, a marketing executive with quick wit and a sharper mind. We talked until the venue staff began stacking chairs around us. By the end of the night, I had her number and a promise for dinner the following weekend. Our romance moved quickly. Within 3 months, we were practically living together. Heather was everything I thought I wanted: intelligent, ambitious, and passionate about life. We shared a love for obscure indie films, spicy Thai food, and weekend hiking trips through the Cascades. When she talked about her dreams, her eyes lit up in a way that made me want to build a life around keeping that light alive. We fit together like we were designed that way. I told my brother Tyler over beers one night. "She challenges me to be better." Back then, I thought that was a good thing. 1 year to the day after we met, I proposed during a sunset dinner cruise on Lake Washington. The ring had belonged to my grandmother, a modest diamond that caught the last golden rays of daylight when I opened the box. Heather cried and said yes, then immediately started planning our wedding with characteristic efficiency. The ceremony was everything we wanted. 100 guests at a renovated barn venue outside the city, string lights twinkling above dancing friends and family. My parents beamed with pride, and even Heather's typically stoic father seemed genuinely pleased. Those first married months were filled with weekend explorations of hidden Pacific Northwest beaches, cooking elaborate meals in our new kitchen, and building what I thought was a foundation for decades of happiness. "You are the best decision I ever made," I whispered to her one night as we fell asleep. She nestled closer and said she felt the same. It was subtle how things began to change. So subtle that looking back, I cannot pinpoint exactly when the first red flag appeared. Somewhere around our 2nd anniversary, Heather started making small comments about my clothes. "Are you really wearing that shirt to dinner with my boss?" she asked one evening, her nose wrinkling slightly. "You have that blue button-down that looks so much more professional." I changed without argument. It seemed easier. And honestly, maybe she was right. Her fashion sense had always been better than mine. But the comments continued and expanded beyond clothing. "I noticed you have been texting Jackson a lot," she mentioned casually one Sunday morning. "You two have been friends forever. But do you really need to talk every day?" Jackson had been my best friend since 6th grade. We had never gone more than a few days without contact. But I found myself spacing out my texts to avoid Heather's raised eyebrows. Then came questions about my work schedule and colleagues. "Who is this Lisa that keeps liking your Instagram posts?" Heather asked, scrolling through my phone one evening. She had grabbed it casually to look up a restaurant, but somehow ended up reviewing my social media activity. "She is the new project manager at work," I explained. "We are on the downtown renovation together." Heather replied, continuing to scroll. "She seems very friendly." I started leaving my phone in my pocket more often. Later, when I mentioned these behaviors to my brother, he looked concerned. But I brushed it off. "She had a controlling family growing up," I explained. "Her parents monitored everything she did. She is just working through some stuff. Tyler did not look convinced, but he dropped it. I wish he had pushed harder. The control extended to our finances in the 3rd year of marriage. We had separate accounts and a joint one for household expenses. Heather suggested combining everything. It would be easier to manage our budget that way, she said reasonably. And I could take care of all the bills, since I am better with money. What she meant was, she wanted oversight of all my spending. When I hesitated, she grew cold. The first time she deployed what would become a familiar tactic. For 3 days she was polite but distant, going to bed early, turning away from my touch. When I finally agreed to add her name to my personal account, her warmth returned immediately. We spent that weekend at a bed and breakfast on the Oregon coast, and she was the loving, attentive wife I had married. I ignored the uneasiness in my stomach. 2 weeks later, she questioned a charge on our statement. $400 at Pacific Camera Supply. What did you need that badly? Photography had been my hobby since college, my creative outlet away from the precision of architectural design. I had saved for months for a new lens. I mentioned I was going to buy it, I said defensively. It was my personal spending money. We could have put that toward our vacation fund, she countered. Or the house remodel. You need to consult me before making these frivolous purchases. The pattern continued growing worse. Heather would make a demand. If I resisted, intimacy would vanish from our marriage, sometimes for days, sometimes weeks. When I eventually gave in, she would reward me with affection, like training a dog. The realization made me sick, but I kept hoping things would improve. They did not. They got worse. By our 4th anniversary, I barely recognized my life. My friendship with Jackson had dwindled to occasional texts. Heather had methodically driven a wedge between us, questioning his motives, criticizing his lifestyle choices, and making such a scene the few times he visited that he eventually stopped coming. He is a bad influence, she insisted after an uncomfortable dinner where she had interrogated him about his dating life. 35, and still acting like a college student. The truth was, Jackson had a successful career in software engineering and a healthy dating life. What Heather could not tolerate was his independence, and the way he occasionally raised an eyebrow at how she spoke to me. I missed 3 family events in 6 months. My niece's baptism, my mother's 65th birthday, and my cousin's wedding. All because Heather manufactured emergencies or conflicts that made it impossible for us to attend. Your family never really accepted me anyway, she said when I expressed disappointment about missing Mom's birthday. They judged me for being ambitious. My family had been nothing but welcoming, but Heather twisted every interaction to support her narrative. At work, my colleague Lisa pulled me aside after a project meeting. Eric, is everything okay? She asked quietly. You have seemed different lately, withdrawn. Just busy, I replied automatically. Look, she hesitated. This is not my business, but my sister was in a controlling relationship for years. I recognize some of the signs. If you ever need to talk... I cut her off with a forced laugh. Heather and I are fine. Just normal marriage stuff. But Lisa's words stayed with me. That night, I mentioned to Heather that I wanted to attend my 20-year high school reunion in Portland. Without me, her voice took on that dangerous edge I had come to fear. You know I cannot take time off that weekend. I thought I would just go for the night, I suggested. Drive down and back. So you can. What? Reconnect? With old girlfriends? Get drunk with your high school buddies and complain about marriage? She crossed her arms. If our relationship mattered to you, you would not even consider it. I did not go to the reunion. Instead, I sat home with Heather watching a movie I had no interest in, feeling the walls closing in. The next week, I changed my phone password after years of Heather having complete access. She noticed immediately. What are you hiding? She demanded, holding out her hand for my phone. Nothing, I said. I just think we should have some privacy. It is healthier. Healthier! Her laugh was cold. You mean you want to hide things from your wife? That is what men say when they are cheating. I wasn't cheating. The thought had never crossed my mind. But in that moment, standing in our kitchen with Heather's accusatory glare burning into me, I realized I was deeply unhappy. The realization must have shown on my face. "Fine," she said, her voice dropping dangerously. "Have your privacy." That night she slept in the guest room. It was the beginning of the longest punishment yet. For 3 weeks, Heather was a polite roommate. Nothing more. No affection, no intimacy, barely any conversation beyond household necessities. I became desperate, which is exactly what she wanted. I gave her my phone, changed the password back, and apologized profusely for something I had not done wrong. Slowly, her affection returned, doled out carefully like treats to ensure future compliance. During those 3 weeks of emotional isolation, I had used my lunch breaks to research what was happening in my marriage. Terms like emotional manipulation and intimacy as control led me to forums filled with stories that mirrored my own. I created an anonymous email account and joined one such forum, finding unexpected comfort in knowing I was not alone. That was when I began to understand. Heather had discovered that withholding intimacy was her most powerful weapon. Our physical connection had become transactional demands, resistance withholding compliance reward. The humiliation of this reality settled deep in my bones. The pattern crystallized during a photography workshop I had registered for, a 3-day weekend event with a famous landscape photographer I had admired for years. "Cancel it," Heather said flatly when I reminded her it was coming up. "My parents are visiting that weekend. They visit every month," I pointed out, "and this workshop has been on our calendar for 6 months. It is non-refundable. If you cared about my family, you would be here." Her voice took on the familiar edge. "But clearly your hobby matters more than your marriage." I had given in so many times before, but something in me resisted. "I am going to the workshop. We can have dinner with your parents the following weekend." Her eyes narrowed. "Fine, your choice." For the next 23 days, Heather did not touch me. Not a hug, not a kiss, not even an accidental brush of hands passing the salt. She slept facing away from me, a cold chasm between us in our king-sized bed. When I returned from the workshop, which had been a rare bright spot in my increasingly gray life, the freeze deepened. I broke first. I always did. I apologized, promised to prioritize her family in the future, brought home flowers and her favorite pastries. Gradually, the ice thawed. When she finally kissed me after nearly a month, the relief was overwhelming, even as self-loathing churned in my stomach. My brother noticed the change in me when we met for lunch. "You have lost weight," Tyler observed, "and you look." I do not know, diminished somehow. "Work has been stressful." I lied. "Is it work? Or is it Heather?" He held up a hand when I started to protest. "Every time we talk lately, you mention something she did not let you do. Those are your words, Eric. Let you. Like you need permission to live your life." I changed the subject, but his words echoed. I had been using that phrase, "Heather would not let me." When had I surrendered my autonomy so completely? Everything changed on a rainy Friday in October 5 years into our marriage. I had been offered a promotion, project lead, on a major downtown development. It meant more money but also more hours temporarily, including some evenings. I broached the subject carefully over dinner, emphasizing the prestige and financial benefits before mentioning the schedule. Heather's fork clattered against her plate. "Absolutely not. We barely see each other as it is. It is just for the initial phase," I explained. 3 months at most. Then my schedule would actually be more flexible than now. "I need you home by 6, she said firmly. Period. Tell them you cannot do it." "This is a huge opportunity," I argued. "I have worked toward this for years." Her eyes went cold. "You need to decide what matters more, your marriage or your ambition." We went to bed angry. The next morning, Heather delivered her ultimatum in clear terms. "If you want any intimacy in this marriage, you will do as I say, and turn down that promotion." The familiar pattern should have activated, my resistance, her freeze, my eventual surrender. But something had shifted inside me. Maybe it was the culmination of years of control. Maybe it was the naked manipulation laid so bare. Or maybe I had simply reached my limit. I spent that day in a daze, moving through household chores mechanically, while my mind raced. That night, while Heather visited her sister, I found myself searching her desk for our insurance documents. Instead, I found bank statements from an account I did not know existed. An account with over $40,000, money that had apparently been diverted from our joint savings. Beside the statements was her phone, forgotten in her hurry to leave. I had never invaded her privacy before, despite her constant monitoring of mine. But something pushed me forward. Her text messages to her friend Kara painted a devastating picture. Eric finally agreed to skip his college roommate's wedding. Took 2 weeks of keeping him in the doghouse, lol, but he always breaks. He wanted to buy another camera lens, but I shut that down. Sometimes, I think he would let me lead him around on a leash, if I withheld sex long enough. There were dozens of such messages spanning years. My wife was not just controlling me, she was mocking me for allowing it. I barely slept. By morning, something had hardened in me, a resolve I had not felt in years. When Heather entered the kitchen, I was already there, coffee in hand. About the promotion, she began. "I am taking it," I said quietly. Her eyes narrowed. "We discussed this. You know where I stand. Yes, you have made your position clear. If I want intimacy in our marriage, I do as you say." "Exactly." She reached for a coffee mug. "I am not doing that anymore," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I am taking the promotion because it is important to my career. And I am not going to be manipulated by the withholding of affection." Her face registered shock, then anger. "Excuse me. Keep it forever." I said, the words flowing now. "I am done being controlled. This is not a partnership. This is not even a healthy relationship." "You do not mean that," she said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. "I found the bank account," I continued. "And I read your text to Kara. I know exactly what you think of me. A pushover you can control, by dispensing or withholding intimacy like dog treats." Her face paled, then flushed with anger. "You went through my private things. That is exactly why I cannot trust you." The deflection might have worked before. Not anymore. "I want a divorce," I said. The words hung in the air between us, impossible to take back. I did not want to. Her expression cycled rapidly through disbelief, anger, and finally, when she realized I meant it, fear. "You cannot be serious. After everything I have done for you, we can work on this. I will go to counseling." "It is too late," I said, surprised at the calm certainty in my voice. "I do not recognize myself anymore, and I do not like who I have become. If you leave me," she hissed, "you will regret it. I will take everything." In that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. There is nothing you can take that would be worse than staying. 3 days later, I moved into a hotel and called a divorce attorney. I was naive to think Heather would make our separation easy. When the reality of my departure sank in, she launched a campaign that swung wildly between tearful pleas for reconciliation and vicious character assassination. "She is telling everyone you were emotionally abusive," my friend Marcus reported after running into Heather at a mutual acquaintance's dinner party, "and that you were cheating with someone from work." The allegations stung but did not surprise me. My lawyer, Amanda, had warned me this might happen. Document everything she advised during our first meeting. Forward emails, save texts, keep a journal of interactions. People who control through manipulation often try to control the narrative during divorce. She was right. Heather refused mediation, dragging us into a protracted legal battle that seemed designed more to punish me than to fairly divide assets. She wanted the house, my retirement accounts, and alimony that would have left me financially crippled. "She has no grounds for these demands," Amanda assured me. "But she is betting you will give in to avoid conflict, just like you have done throughout your marriage." She did not know yet that the old Eric, the one who would yield to keep peace, was gone. 6 weeks into the divorce proceedings, I received an unexpected ally. Heather's cousin Jordan reached out through a mutual friend. "I need to talk to you," she said when we met for coffee. "What Heather is doing to you, she did similar things to her college boyfriend. And the guy she dated before you. It is a pattern, and her parents enable it. Jordan's confirmation of what I had begun to suspect was both validating and heartbreaking. The woman I had loved, perhaps still loved in some confused way, was fundamentally incapable of an equal partnership. Heather's parents called next, asking to meet. I agreed against Amanda's advice. "Eric, this divorce is hasty and unnecessary," her father said across the restaurant table. "Every marriage has rough patches. Heather is willing to work on things." With all due respect, I replied, "This is not about rough patches. This is about 5 years of systematic control and manipulation. I am not coming back." "You took vows," her mother snapped. "In sickness and health. Heather has anxiety issues. She needs stability." "What she needs is therapy," I said. "And I need a life that belongs to me again." The divorce dragged on for 6 months, draining my energy and savings. I lost 15 pounds and struggled with insomnia. But I never wavered. When the final papers were signed, I had managed to keep my retirement accounts and half the equity in our house. Heather got the house itself, and a larger portion of our savings, including the secret account I had discovered. It wasn't perfectly fair, but it was finished. I was free. My first apartment post-divorce was a 1-bedroom near Lake Union. When I first walked in with my suitcases and the few household items I had taken from our home, the emptiness was daunting. That night, I sat on my newly purchased couch, surrounded by boxes, and felt 2 competing emotions: profound loneliness and unprecedented freedom. Rebuilding my life happened in small steps. I texted Jackson apologizing for my years of distance. His response came immediately. "I have been waiting for this text. Beer tomorrow." Our reunion was awkward at first, years of unspoken feelings hanging between us. "I knew she was isolating you," he said finally. "But every time I tried to say something, you pulled further away." "I should have listened," I admitted. "I was too deep in it to see clearly." "Well, you are seeing clearly now," he said, ordering us another round. "That is what matters." Reconnecting with friends and family was healing, but I also needed professional help. My therapist, Dr. Reeves, helped me understand how I had become vulnerable to Heather's control. "You have strong caretaking tendencies," she explained during one session, "combined with conflict avoidance and a desire to please. These are not bad traits inherently, but they made you susceptible to someone who would exploit them." I learned about trauma bonds, gaslighting, and the slow erosion of boundaries that had left me unable to recognize coercion masquerading as love. Most importantly, I learned I was not alone. Many people, men and women alike, find themselves in controlling relationships that diminish them piece by piece. My family welcomed me back with open arms. My sister Abby, who had never warmed to Heather, helped me furnish my apartment and regularly included me in family dinners with her husband and kids. "We miss the real you," she said one evening, as we washed dishes side by side. For years, it was like talking to a muted version of my brother. Work became a refuge. I threw myself into the promotion I had fought for, finding satisfaction in creative challenges and collaborative problem solving. My boss noticed the change. "Whatever is going on in your personal life," she said during my performance review, "it seems to have unleashed your potential here. This is the designer I always knew you could be." Photography, my long-suppressed passion, bloomed again. I joined a local club that met weekly for shoots around the city. The first time I spent $400 on camera equipment, without a second thought or pang of guilt, was surprisingly emotional. Such a small freedom, but it represented so much more. The first holiday season alone loomed like a test. Thanksgiving at my parents' house without a partner. Christmas morning, waking up in a quiet apartment. These milestones of solitude scared me, until I realized I could create new traditions. I hosted a Friendsgiving for other singles. I volunteered at a community center on Christmas Eve. I traveled alone to a photography retreat over New Year's. Slowly, I recognized the man in the mirror again. The shadows under my eyes faded. My sense of humor returned. I relearned how to make decisions without calculating another person's reaction or potential punishment. One ordinary Tuesday, I realized I had not thought about Heather all day. Not once. The realization stopped me in my tracks. A small victory, but significant. I was healing. You should come volunteer at the Community Art Center, Jackson suggested one Saturday, 14 months after my divorce was finalized. They need help setting up for their spring showcase. Might be good for your photography connections. I agreed, not realizing that decision would change my life again, this time for the better. The Seattle Community Art Center was housed in a renovated warehouse, sunlight streaming through industrial windows onto walls covered with local artwork. I was hanging a series of black and white cityscapes when someone spoke behind me. The third one is crooked. I turned to find a woman with curly auburn hair and warm brown eyes regarding the photos critically. She wore paint-splattered jeans and a faded University of Washington sweatshirt. Sorry, I adjusted the frame. Better perfect. She smiled and extended her hand. I am Samantha Lewis, art therapist, an occasional taskmaster. Eric Jensen, architect, and mediocre photographer. These are yours, she gestured to the cityscapes. They are hardly mediocre. I especially like how you have captured light reflecting off the urban surfaces. There is a surprising warmth in what could be cold compositions. Her observation was unexpectedly insightful. Most people just said they liked my photos without specific feedback. Thank you, I said, genuinely pleased. Are you exhibiting work here too? No, I run the therapy programs. Art as healing, especially for kids from difficult backgrounds. Her passion was evident as she described her work. We talked until Jackson found us raising an eyebrow at our animated conversation. Later, he was not subtle. She is single, you know, and not crazy as far as I can tell. I am not ready, I said automatically. The thought of dating after Heather still filled me with anxiety. But over the next few weeks, I found myself volunteering more often at the center. Samantha and I developed an easy friendship, discussing photography, art therapy techniques, and eventually our pasts. Over coffee one rainy afternoon, I cautiously shared some of my marriage experience. That sounds incredibly difficult, she said when I finished, no judgment in her eyes. Rebuilding trust, in others and yourself, after something like that takes time. Are you analyzing me with your therapist hat on? I asked with a small smile. No, she laughed. Just speaking as someone who has her own relationship baggage. Different stories, similar themes. What struck me about Samantha was her fundamental independence. She had a full, rich life. Close friends, meaningful work, creative pursuits, a relationship with her family that seemed healthy but not enmeshed. She did not need anyone to complete her, which paradoxically made her wonderful company. Our first real date was not planned as such. We had been meeting casually for months when she invited me to a photography exhibition downtown. Just as friends, she clarified. No pressure. The evening flowed effortlessly. We argued good-naturedly about the merits of different photographers, shared appetizers at a hole-in-the-wall Thai restaurant afterward, and ended up walking along the waterfront despite the drizzling rain. Standing under the awning of a closed fish market watching fairy lights glide across the dark water, I felt a long dormant flutter in my chest. When Samantha turned to make a comment about the view, I kissed her. It was brief and tentative, and nothing like kissing Heather had ever been. This felt like a choice freely made, not a transaction or obligation. I have wanted to do that for weeks, I admitted. What took you so long? She asked, her smile visible, even in the dim light. As our relationship developed, I waited for red flags, the subtle signs I had missed or ignored with Heather. But Samantha operated from a fundamentally different playbook. When we disagreed, she stated her position clearly, but never manipulated or withdrew. She encouraged my friendships and photography rather than competing with them. Most startlingly, she had no interest in controlling my choices, even when they affected her. You should go on that architecture retreat in Vancouver, she said when I mentioned it hesitantly 6 months into our relationship. It sounds perfect for you. But we had talked about going to Portland that weekend, I reminded her. Portland will still be there another time, she shrugged. This is important for your work. Why would I stand in the way of that? Such a simple thing. Supportive encouragement of my independent interests. but it brought tears to my eyes. "What did I say?" she asked, concerned. "Nothing," I assured her. "It is just very different this time. With Samantha, intimacy was never currency. It was genuine connection freely given, and received, never used as reward or punishment. The first time we had a significant disagreement about whether to tell a mutual friend about a potential job opportunity that might disrupt their current plans, I braced myself unconsciously for coldness or withdrawal. Instead, Samantha sighed after we had both stated our positions. "We see this differently, and that is okay. I still think I am right, but I understand your perspective. Let us sleep on it and talk again tomorrow." That night, she curled against me as naturally as ever. No distance, no coldness. The realization that disagreement did not threaten our connection was revolutionary. 2 years after my divorce, I ran into mutual friends from my marriage at a restaurant downtown. The conversation was awkward but civil. Later, one of them emailed me. "I should have said this in person, but Heather is dating someone new. He reminds me of you. Nice guy, accommodating. She is already controlling where he goes and who he sees. I wish I had recognized what was happening to you back then." I felt a complex mixture of emotions, validation, sadness for her new partner, but overwhelming gratitude for my escape. That night, I told Samantha about the email. "Do you ever want to warn him?" she asked. "I considered it," I admitted. "But people rarely recognize control when they are in its grip." I certainly did not. "It took courage to leave," she said simply. "Not everyone finds that strength." The journey of self-discovery after Heather was as important as finding new love. Through therapy and reflection, I recognized patterns from my childhood. A father who valued peace at any cost. A mother whose approval was contingent on meeting expectations. I had learned early that maintaining harmony often meant suppressing my own needs. People-pleasing becomes a survival strategy, Dr. Reeves explained. You learned that your worth was tied to making others happy, even at your own expense. Breaking these patterns meant developing stronger boundaries in all relationships. I practiced saying no to requests that did not serve me. I expressed preferences without apologizing. I acknowledged my own needs as valid and important. My sense of masculinity evolved too. I had internalized cultural messages that real men should be able to handle difficult women, that seeking help was weakness, that emotional control was somehow emasculating. Shedding these beliefs was liberating. Strength, I learned, often manifests in vulnerability and self-respect, not stoic endurance of mistreatment. Photography became a powerful outlet for self-expression. A year and a half after my divorce, I submitted work to a juried exhibition at a respected gallery. When 3 of my pieces were accepted, the validation was sweeter for being based on genuine merit rather than someone else's approval. Samantha attended the opening night, proudly pointing out my photographs to anyone who would listen. "I am so impressed by how you capture emotional resonance in urban landscapes," she told me later. "It is like you find humanity in concrete and steel." Her pride was genuine, not in how I reflected on her, but in my independent accomplishment. The difference was subtle, but profound. As I healed, I found myself able to help others. When my friend Marcus confided that his girlfriend monitored his texts and exploded if he went out without her, I recognized the warning signs. "Does she withdraw affection when you do not comply with her wishes?" I asked carefully. His expression told me everything. "How did you know?" "Because I lived it," I said, and shared my experience. Not to tell him what to do, but to offer perspective he might not have. 2 months later, he ended the relationship. "I kept hearing your story in my head," he told me. I realized I was walking the same path. The most unexpected aspect of healing was finding peace without bitterness. I did not hate Heather anymore. I understood that her controlling behavior likely stemmed from her own deep insecurities and possibly trauma. That did not excuse her actions, but it helped me release the anger that had initially fueled my escape. Freedom from resentment was its own kind of liberation. A new chapter began on a crisp autumn evening, 3 years after my divorce. Samantha and I had hiked to a viewpoint overlooking the city and Puget Sound beyond. As the setting sun painted the water copper and gold, I asked her to marry me. The proposal was nothing like my first. No grand gestures or public spectacle. Just the two of us, a thermos of hot chocolate, and a simple question asked from a place of wholeness rather than need. "Are you sure?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "After everything I am sure about you," I replied. "I am sure about us. We are partners, not owner and possession." Her yes was followed by laughter and tears, and plans immediately made and discarded as we envisioned our future together. We agreed on a small ceremony with close friends and family, a honeymoon hiking in New Zealand, and a commitment to maintain our individual passions within our shared life. Looking back on the past 5 years, from the depths of my controlled marriage to the freedom and joy I have found since, I am struck by how much I have learned about love. Real love enhances rather than diminishes. It encourages growth rather than compliance. It respects boundaries rather than trampling them. My relationship with Samantha is built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. We maintain our individual identities while creating something stronger together. We disagree sometimes, compromise often, and always remember that we are on the same team. The house we bought last year has space for both of us to pursue our passions. A photography studio for me, a home office for her therapy practice. We make decisions together, consulting, but not controlling. We give each other freedom to maintain separate friendships and interests. Most importantly, we never use affection or intimacy as bargaining chips or weapons. Maintaining healthy relationship patterns requires ongoing awareness. Old habits sometimes resurface. My tendency to people please, my fear of conflict. But now I recognize these patterns when they emerge and can choose different responses. Samantha does the same with her own history-based tendencies. The scars from my marriage to Heather have faded but not disappeared entirely. Certain triggers can still activate old fears. A cold response when I expected warmth. A minor disagreement that my brain momentarily magnifies. The difference is that I now have tools to manage these responses rather than being controlled by them. Perhaps the greatest lesson I have learned is that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads you to what you truly need. My marriage to Heather was painful and diminishing, but without that experience, I might never have developed the strength and self-knowledge that allow me to fully appreciate the healthy love I have found. I sometimes wonder how many people remain trapped in controlling relationships, believing that manipulation is love, that sacrifice should be one-sided, that loneliness can exist even in partnership. If my story reaches even one person who recognizes their own situation in my words, I hope it offers both recognition and hope. Are you in a relationship where your autonomy is restricted, where affection is used as currency, where you have become smaller rather than larger? If so, please know that another life is possible. The path out is difficult. I will not pretend otherwise, but freedom awaits on the other side. I would love to hear about your experiences with controlling relationships and how you found your way to healthier connections. Drop a comment below sharing what resonated with you in this story. If this helped you recognize unhealthy patterns in your own life, please like and subscribe to support others finding this content. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that love should never feel like a prison. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve a relationship that helps you grow, not one that keeps you small.